today. I've created a short video on why I'm running for office. I am a candidate in the 37th Legislative District for State Representative. I'm challenging the incumbent, Sharon Tomiko Santos. I'm a 20-year resident of the 37th Legislative District. I currently live on Beacon Hill. Before that, I lived in the Columbia City neighborhood. And as I said, this video will sort of briefly explain why I'm running for office. Before I do that, I want to make a couple comments about Sharon Santos. She's been in office for 22 years, and she's made a number of contributions, important contributions to the district, I think most notably in the field of K-12 education. That's, of course, to her credit, and it's also the case that I have what I would refer to as a cordial and professional relationship with Sharon. During the legislative sessions for the past 5 years or so, she calls in to me once a month and has given me an update on the proceedings in Olympia, and I then report her findings to the membership of the 37th District Democrats at a monthly meeting. It's great that she has taken the time to demonstrate that interest in the membership and in the party. So I'm acknowledging her contributions and expressing my appreciation to her for her service. That being said, we are entering a new era where a new approach to what happens in Olympia needs to be taken. Our era is defined by 4 crises, which I'll talk about momentarily, and this is going to demand a complete restructuring of how the state goes about conducting its business. We can no longer rely on incremental reforms. And I believe that I have a powerful and broad background that would enable me to make very strong contributions to the restructuring that needs to take place. So let's talk about this. I say this is a new era and defined by 4 crises. Those crises are first, of course, the public health crises of COVID-19. Second is the economic crisis that is accompanying the health crisis. We're aware of both these crises. The third is a social crisis. This is also self-evident to us, especially in the 37th District Democrats, 37th Legislative District. And what I mean by that is the public health crisis and the economic crisis, of course, are both impacting lower income and minority communities far more than non-minority or affluent communities. So this is the whole situation's compounded. And then the fourth crisis is a budget crisis. We're going to go into Olympia next year with far less revenue than we expected, because businesses aren't paying taxes and either are individuals as much as before, and far higher expenses to deal with the costs of the pandemic. So the confluence of these 4 crises, public health, economic, social, and budget, are going to require us to really rethink how Washington State does business. So again, this isn't going to be an incremental reform session. This is going to be a structural change session. With that, I have 4 priorities. I'll go into these more in my policy priority videos, but they are the following. First, we have to do everything possible to protect the most vulnerable people in our district and in our state during this time. We have a major problem with income inequality that's being exacerbated by these crises, so we need to protect the most vulnerable. That's first. Second, we need to restructure how the state conducts its operations, from K-12 education to mental health to the hospital system, etc. We need to rethink how we actually provide services. So restructuring is second. Third, we desperately need, and have desperately needed for quite some time, progressive taxation. We need to tax more affluent people to fund the crisis. This should have been done long ago. To some extent, it's a dereliction of duty, in my opinion, by the state legislature that we've arrived at this point where we have the most regressive tax system in the entire country at just the time when that's the exact wrong tax system to have. So that needs to change. There needs to be a new tax on affluent people in the state. And finally, we have to aggressively deal with climate change. That's not going to go away. We're learning how painful it is to not address science meaningfully with COVID, and now we are about to learn the same thing with climate change if we don't take that seriously. So those are my 4 priorities. Protect the most vulnerable, restructure the state's operation, progressive taxation, and dealing with climate change. And finally, as I mentioned up front, I believe I have a background well suited to enable me to powerfully and meaningfully contribute to these objectives. I have a strong background in the business, economics, consulting world and in the education world. I'm involved with activism. I'm an active member of the 37th District, Democrats, etc. I'll talk more about that in my background video, but I believe that I can make important and powerful contributions to the restructuring that needs to happen. So with that, I will say again, my name is John Stafford. I'm running for state representative in the 37th District. I very much appreciate you watching the video to learn more about my candidacy. I do ask for your support, and I look forward to being in touch as the campaign continues. Thank you.